Good afternoon and welcome to True Crime Mysteries. If you're new to the channel, hello and welcome, and if you're returning, welcome back. Today we'll be discussing 4 Jane Does who have recently been identified. Let's get into it. Number 1. Tammy Corinne Terrell. On October 5, 1980, in Henderson, Nevada, the body of a young woman was found in a remote desert area. The young woman is estimated to be between the ages of 17 and 19. She had been found without any clothing, a purse, or identification. She was 5'2", 102 pounds, with light brown hair and blue eyes. Sketches were done of the unknown Jane Doe and circulated around the state, but no one came forward to identify her. Eventually, the Henderson Police Department gave her the moniker Jane Aurora Grand Doe for the area she was found in. Fingerprint and dental characteristics were logged with national databases. A description included references to a crude, apparently amateur S tattoo made with blue ink on the inside of her right forearm. She had pierced ears, a vaccination scar on her left bicep, and had dental work done in the past. She had died from blunt force trauma, and her death was ruled as a homicide. According to local police, she had been stabbed and beaten to death, possibly with a hammer. She had facial injuries, multiple head wounds, and puncture or stab wounds on her back. One of her teeth had even been knocked out. She'd been in the desert for less than 24 hours before her body was discovered. Despite best efforts from law enforcement, they weren't able to locate anyone that recognized the Jane Doe and really had no way of solving her murder. The lead detective on her case, who had been with her since her discovery, had vowed to see her case through. He and his wife had even covered the cost of her burial. Her case quickly went cold and eventually was closed altogether. In 2015, detectives at the Henderson PD were going through unsolved cold cases and decided to give the Aurora Grand Jane Doe case another look. They reached out to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, who had experts make an artistic rendering and began to circulate the image. They also exhumed her grave in order to get a fresh DNA sample. The case was featured on Unsolved Mysteries in 2021, and that same year they received their first advance in the case in 40 years. Jane Doe's DNA had a direct familial match. They reached out to that person, who ended up being Jane Doe's sibling, and after 4 decades they had an identification: Tammy Terrell. Tammy Terrell disappeared from Roswell, New Mexico back in 1980. She was a troubled teen living in Roswell in a foster home with her 4 sisters. Despite the rough start she'd had in life, she was trying to turn her life around. On the night of her disappearance, her foster parents had dropped her off at the Eastern New Mexico Fairgrounds in Roswell with another girl. When they returned to pick her up, Tammy was not there. According to authorities, she was last seen at a restaurant near the fairgrounds with a man and a woman.
Like if she was missing, but she was right there, just right there.
Tammy Terrell was one of 4 sisters who grew up in a foster home. Carla Clontz was the youngest, just 13, when Tammy went missing.
You're always looking for that face.
She says when Tammy was reported missing, last seen in a restaurant after the Roswell State Fair in 1980, local police didn't care.
The police said that she was 17 and had ran away for a couple of times, and she was almost going to be 18, so they're not going to look for her. So they didn't.
But Carla did look everywhere she went for 41 years.
Her birthday is on the 4th of July, so, every 4th of July, you're wondering and you're missing her. It's not a true celebration with her missing. And, we would always look in crowds. We would look in, at homeless people in their faces, trying to look to see if she's one of them.
Tammy's sisters never stopped looking for her, and the lead detective that had originally worked her case was at the press conference when her identification was announced. Police agencies in Nevada and southeast New Mexico are working together to find out who killed Tammy and how she ended up in Nevada. Roswell police are actively seeking leads for anyone who might have seen Tammy on the night in 1980 or knows anything about her disappearance. Anyone with information on the Tammy Terrell case is asked to contact Henderson Police Department or Crime Stoppers. Number 2. Pamela Darlene Young. On May 21, 2002, near Highway 135, just outside of Liberty, Texas, archaeologists collecting soil samples made a grisly discovery. They found a human skull and a partial skeleton remains in an open field near Swamp City Road. The medical examiner determined the remains belonged to a Hispanic or white woman between the ages of 16 and 30 and determined that the remains had been there for at least 2 years. Because the remains had been exposed to the elements for so long, it was difficult to determine the cause of death. There was no additional evidence found near the remains and nothing to identify the woman, and the case went cold before it could even begin. The case was re-examined in 2013, where the skull was scanned for 3D reconstruction. It was then that they discovered the victim had a cleft palate. They sent out the rendering to various government agencies and attempted to match it to a missing persons case in Texas. They sent out the rendering to various government agencies and attempted to match it to missing persons cases in Texas, but nothing came up. In 2019, the DNA Doe Project was contacted to help determine who the remains belonged to using genetic genealogy research. After 2 years, they traced her direct maternal line back to a family located in Virginia and North Carolina. They also discovered that the family had a daughter who had moved to Texas and had a cleft palate. Law enforcement had never been able to locate that woman, who would have been 27 back in the late 90s, and there weren't any records of her after 1998, making officers confident that the remains belonged to Pamela Darlene Young. Pamela had never been reported missing by her family. She had relocated to Texas after falling out with family members. Chief Deputy Craig Harrington with the Greggs County Sheriff's Department said there are no leads in this case, but they are still hoping to find information about what happened to Pamela. They still have no idea how Pamela came to be in an open field, and no cause of death was ever determined. But they did reveal they have a person of interest. However, they have been deceased since 2017. Anyone with information about Pamela, particularly if anyone knew her when she lived in Texas, is asked to call the Sheriff's Criminal Investigation Division or the Greggs County Crime Stoppers Division. Number 3. Brenda Marie Giroux. On April 8, 1981, a young woman's body was found near the Pima County Fairgrounds in Arizona by a group riding off-road vehicles. Her body had been dumped along a dirt road. Detectives said it appeared that the woman had been sexually assaulted and suffered a violent death. She had been in the desert for a couple of days before she was discovered. No identification could be found for the young woman. She was described as blonde with delicate facial features, 18 to 20 years old, 5'3", and a small frame. She was wearing a navy blue blouse with red sleeves and a floral print, blue jeans, white ankle socks with pom-poms, and brown suede shoes. 2 jackets were also found near her body, one a blue denim with red and white stripes on the cuffs and collar, and the other a blue rain jacket. They did a sketch of the woman, but no one came forward, and she was given the name Pima County Jane Doe. For 3 decades, that was all she was known as. In 2012, detectives decided to reopen her investigation and gather new evidence. Her body was exhumed, DNA evidence was taken, and investigators also took the opportunity to create a 3D rendering of her skull to get a better idea of what she may have looked like. In 2014, it was determined that the reconstruction closely matched a potential unknown victim from an inmate in Arizona, John Kalhauser, who was serving 26 years and had taken a no-contest plea regarding his wife's disappearance. The photograph had been in his wallet when he was arrested, and he would never reveal who the young woman was. Law enforcement paired the photograph with the reconstruction and sent it through social media all over the country, hoping someone would recognize her. Eventually, cold case detectives got in contact with Bill Giroux, who thought the reconstruction might be his sister. He wanted to get ruled out, still hoping his beloved sister was still alive. 20-year-old Brenda Giroux had been missing since 1981. Originally from Nashua, New Hampshire, She had left on a road trip with her boyfriend, John Kalhauser. Bill and Brenda had grown up in foster care, and they were all each other had for family. Brenda was a few years older than he was, and he remembered how mad he was when Brenda told him she was going to California. He didn't want to be left behind, but Brenda assured him she wasn't going to abandon him. The two had kept in contact for the first few weeks after she left. She'd called him first from New Mexico, and she sent him an envelope of turquoise. Her last call had been from Arizona, where she had seemed upset, and told Bill that she was coming home. When he asked what was wrong, she didn't say. It had been a short call, but she told him that she loved him before hanging up. That was the last time Bill spoke to his sister. The envelope of turquoise she had mailed him arrived several weeks later. Over the years, Bill had made several attempts to find his sister, but law enforcement didn't file a police report believing she wasn't a missing person. Another attempt informed him that they had made contact with Brenda, that she didn't want to be in contact with him, which had crushed him. To now know that after all these years she had been deceased was heartbreaking, but Brenda hadn't willingly left him behind. DNA confirmed Pima County Jane Doe was Brenda, and law enforcement brought that to John Kalhauser, who refused to acknowledge he knew Brenda. Bill said that he didn't know that John Kalhauser was a convicted murderer, and he thought Brenda didn't know either. He served 7 years in prison for killing a man when he was only 17. He had also shot the lover of his fiancée in 1979. That man had survived 3 gunshot wounds, and Kalhauser had been charged with armed assault with intent to murder. He was out on bond when he met Brenda. The two had met in a bar that Brenda was working at. Eventually, he convinced her to take a trip with him to California. But what he didn't tell her was that he was skipping out on his parole. Bill remembered his final goodbye with Brenda. She had jumped on the back of Kalhauser's motorcycle, and the two set off. John Kalhauser stayed in Arizona. He started going by the name Donald Stechy, which had been the name of a classmate he'd gone to school with in elementary school. He got married to Diane Van Reeth, and the couple had 2 children together. In 1995, Diane filed for divorce and sole custody of the children. On August 10, 1995, Diane left home from work and was never seen again. Kalhauser was arrested in regards to her disappearance, and it was then discovered that he was going by an assumed name. When law enforcement connected him to his real name, they found the warrant in Massachusetts for his arrest. He was extradited back to Massachusetts to serve 29 years for the assault of his former fiance's boyfriend. He was also charged with Diane's murder in 1999. Her body was never found. Kalhauser is scheduled for release in 2025. Authorities are building a case against Kalhauser for the murder of Brenda Giroux. Anyone with information is asked to reach out to the Gregg County Crime Stoppers. Number 4. Kimberly Raina Jones. On September 28, 2016, a new girl's body was found in a ravine near the White Hills area of Arizona, near Highway 93 in Dolan Springs, close to the Nevada border. Due to the body decomposition, an identification or cause of death could not be made at that time. Authorities shared a composite sketch on social media, but nobody responded. She was described as 5'5", with a slight frame, black hair that was worn in a natural curly style. Her eye color was dark, and they estimated, based on her bone structure, that she was African American, biracial, or Hispanic. In 2020, the case was re-examined and the body was exhumed for new DNA samples. By July 2021, they had matched from a relative that had submitted their DNA with the missing persons report in California. Mojave Jane Doe was identified as missing teen Kimberly Raina Jones. Kimberly Raina Jones was 18 at the time of her disappearance and was reported missing from San Bernardino, California. The investigation into Kimberly's disappearance and murder is ongoing. Law enforcement still doesn't know how Kimberly got to Arizona.
Developing tonight, the body of a California teen who went missing 5 years ago was just identified by authorities in Arizona. The body of 18-year-old Kimberly Raina Jones was found in Dolan Springs, that's in Mojave County, Arizona, in September of 2016. They were just able to identify her after collecting another DNA sample from her last year and sending it to an outside lab. Jones was reported missing from San Bernardino in 2017. Because of decomposition, investigators could not figure out how she died.
Authorities urge anyone with information about Jones to contact the Mojave County Special Investigations Unit or call Crime Stoppers. Well, that is it for this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you like this content and what I do over here, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss my next upload. As well, if you can give this video a like, that would be much appreciated as it helps the channel to grow. We also have channel membership or Patreon if you want to get more behind the scenes, support the channel, and get exclusive content. In the description box of this video, you will also find links to all my socials to connect with me as well as other goodies. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.